Hello, good morning. Welcome to the breakfast meeting here on NBS television. I am Isabella Chukumi. The conversation we're having this morning is pertaining to the exploration of oil and gas. Did you know that there were records that indicate that oil was discovered in Uganda as far back as the 1920s? However, commercial discoveries did not happen until late 2006. So we want to understand particularly how this journey played out. And of course, joining me this morning to have a broader conversation within that regard is the acting director from the Directorate of Petroleum, that is Honey Malinga, to help us understand how exactly this particular sector has been performing over the years. And of course, are we as recent as we thought we are? Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Good morning. Good morning, viewers. I'm called Honey Malinga, acting director of Petroleum, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. The history of oil exploration goes back to 1890, the other century, when Captain Fred Lugard came to Uganda after hearing of the news that there are oil ships in Western Uganda. So when he came here, he formed a company which went to the ground. They tried to do some bit of work, trying to discover the oil ships. Unfortunately, it didn't do much. Then later in 1900, when Uganda became a British colony, other companies came in. They were given licenses or acreages. Those acreages enticed, because of the oil ships, it enticed the companies to do work. Unfortunately, as we approached 1913, 1914, the First World War came in. So companies lost interest. Now, after the First World War, companies came in, but around 1923, 24, we had a financial depression. So those companies lost interest. But along that, during that period, we had a geologist by the name of Wayland. He started documenting the history, the exploration history of oil and gas, the geological maps of the area, and eventually came up with a publication. That publication made other companies pick interest. And among them was the one which drilled the first well in 1939. After drilling the first well in 1939, we all know that that's the period when the Second World War came in. Now, when the Second World War ended, there was a lot of destruction. There was a lot of change in interest in the region. So we could not attract more companies. We could not attract investment. So what happened? Through the colonial government, they strengthened the Geological Survey and Mines Department. So that department did a lot of work, did drilling of wells to do correlation, and eventually no shows of oil were discovered. So governments, the colonials, lost interest. So they zoned East Africa, particularly Uganda, as being an area with no oil. Instead, they promoted agriculture, whereas West Africa was promoted. So between 1945, 46, up to 70s, there was less interest in oil and gas activities in the region. But in the 1970s, we all know we had Iran-Iraq war. That Iran-Iraq war created a big shift. Companies which had picked interest in the Middle East had to look for other areas, and Africa was among them. So through World Bank, a lot of funding was put on the African continent. We had activities in Uganda, we had activities in Kenya, we had activities in West Africa, South Africa, in the effort of discovering oil and gas. So with the loan in 1981 to 84, we were able to do what we call aeromagnetic survey, whereby a plane flies at a certain low altitude, it acquires data. That data was along the Albertine Graben. That Albertine Graben is shared between Uganda and DRC. So that data, when it was acquired, we identified 3 sub-basins. You know, oil comes from sedimentary rocks. So when we get a basin, something which is shaped like a basin. Sediments are poured in. Those sediments eventually mature and form oil. So those 3 sub-basins gave a lot of interest to companies. We promoted, though the promotion was challenging because you can't depend on aeromagnetic survey alone. So towards the end, to correct, in 1985, we got the first law, the first Act of Parliament. That Act of Parliament was to promote oil and gas exploration. In 1986, the current government came in. It discovered that we didn't have the capacity. So the first target was to capacity build, to train Ugandans to be able to do the promotion and attract investment. So towards 1990-91, we attracted the first oil company called Petrofina, BV Uganda. It had the acreage in DRC on the western side in the Atlantic Ocean. So when it tried to transport its equipment to do work in the Albertine Graben through DRC, most of its equipment was destroyed. So it opted not to continue with business in Uganda. So in 1993, the license was revoked. So we had to start a new chapter. 1995, we got a company which stayed there for almost 6 months. The license was revoked because it was not performing. So in 1997, that's January, we managed to attract Heritage Oil and Gas. So it got part of the acreage. Then in the same year, in November 1997, we attracted Hardman Natural Sources from Australia. We all know that in 1999, there was a big challenge that the oil price dropped to about $9 per barrel. So Hardman left, but the good thing in 1998, Heritage had acquired the first seismic. What is seismic? Seismic is a survey whereby you send a signal in the ground, you receive that signal, you process it. So you are able to see the cross-section of the land or the subsurface as if you are seeing when someone has cut a blade through. So we're able to see the structures. So those structures attracted more companies. Later, Hardman came back. Later, we saw Tullow also coming in. But the way Tullow came in, it bought Hardman. In other words, it acquired Hardman. Now, with time, still Tullow acquired Heritage in 2010. But in 2006, along that period, we intensified a lot of scientific work, geophysical, geological work, to the extent that in 2006, we made the first discovery. But that first discovery was really a turning point. There were some wells which were drilled in 2002, in 2003, in 2004. All these wells were dry wells, apart from carbon dioxide, which was got in one of the wells in 2004. Because carbon dioxide is not a good product, Uganda was condemned not to have oil. But in 2006, Hardman, with its little techniques, it drilled the first well, which we call Mputa 1 well, and he made a discovery. And since then, we had things changing.
Would you say that the exploration of the first oil barrel in 2006 was a defining moment for Uganda's oil journey?
Yes, 2006, we call it a commercial discovery. These oil seeps, the first well, which was drilled in 1939, there were oil shows, but were not of commercial quantity. But the 2006 was the first commercial discovery, and it was the turning point.
All right, let's see how easy it is to attract investment for this particular sector.
From my previous points, I indicated that we had Captain Frederick Lugard. He tried. Other companies tried. We had even joint ventures trying. But with the promotion which government did in the 80s and the 90s, we're able to attract more companies, and more companies have come on board. we have seen a lot of investment in the country.
So how much in terms of monies have been invested in this sector so far, and by whom?
That's a tough question. It's like you have been at school. If somebody asks your father that how much have you spent on so and so to educate, it is difficult. So I can give you a rough estimate, about $4 to $5 billion. Why am I saying this? We have done surveys. Companies have been buying each other, so that money is still going to be recovered along the way. Government has spent money, companies have spent money, including even getting loans to do this work. As we talk now, there's a lot of infrastructure going on in the Albertine Graben. It is towards oil production.
What are the expected returns? Are there any?
There are many expected returns. First of all, if we start producing, we shall get the hard cash. Some of us have been trained, so that is already a return. We are able to say we are geoscientists. The infrastructures which have been put in place, those are part of the returns. So there are many returns. So it is very difficult to list, but there are many.
All right, and finally, should Ugandans look forward or be excited about oil as a discovery?
Why not? Because if we're not excited, we would not be working. But I see many people are interested. People have got employment.
Does it trickle down to the everyday person? Because the assumption is oil as a sector is meant for the elite, but how will the ordinary person in Uganda benefit from it? Why should they be excited about it?
In 1998, when we did the first seismic in the Semlik, it was a no-go area. And you remember that's the period when we had the Kichwamba incidents, when students were killed. But because of the prospects in that place, there was infrastructure was put there. We had MTN, special dedicated MTN connection to that area. People could communicate. We had the road infrastructure being improved. So when you put those type of infrastructure in place, definitely there is a way you can benefit. There's indirect benefits from oil and gas.
All right, our discussion this morning was pertaining to oil and gas and oil and mining and the journey therein. Before I let you go, Mr. Malinga, what would you like the viewers to take home from the conversation you and I had this morning?
Fellow viewers, last week on Wednesday, we were supposed to have appeared on NBS. Unfortunately, the technology let us down. We're in a different channel. I was supposed to have participated in the launch of this campaign, but I couldn't come up because of the technology. What we are doing is to create awareness to the public. So these 90 days, which Chamber of Mines and Petroleum is championing, is to create awareness both in the minerals and in the petroleum, which is oil and gas. So public should pick interest and to know what exactly is happening and to know exactly what is coming up. It is because of the economic situation we are in, the COVID. Otherwise, soon we shall have what we call the final investment decision, whereby the joint ventures are going to make a decision that this is what we are going to invest in the next 25 years.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Honey Malinga. And our discussion this morning was pertaining to oil and mining. NBS Television is the forum for which you should look forward to the 90 days of oil and mining. It will be running from the 26th of August all the way until the 26th of November. And for those that feel like this topic is meant for the elite, as you've heard, the 90 days is meant for every Ugandan to acquaint yourself, because once we have gotten the first oil barrel, it is beneficial to you and myself. Thank you so much for being part of this particular session. I have another one coming up shortly.